In linguistics, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. Topics that might be interesting for you, but don't require much research, so they aren't fulfilling for me. But your boy's strapped for ideas, so here's... Number 1, why is English spelling so messed up? So languages have to make an effort not to be messed up. English used to have 25 vowels and diphthongs that were indiscriminately shuffled into today's 16-ish vowel phonemes. And unless you make an effort to reform that, your spelling messes itself up. That being said, English is worse than most other languages because its spelling system was designed for French, and the incomprehensible problem of loanwords. So English borrowed a lot of words from French, but for the most part, these are consistent. Well, the ones we borrowed during the invasion. The real problem languages were Latin and Greek. See, Latin and Greek are quote-unquote classical languages, so you can't defile the spelling or pronunciation. So we ended up with a bunch of words that are spelled in a completely non-English way and are pronounced completely unlike they're spelled.
And you may ask yourself, doesn't that defeat the entire point of a spelling system?
Maybe, but the Romans invaded the entire Mediterranean, so you kind of have to do what they say. That set the precedent that English doesn't change the spelling of a word it borrows, which led to the general rule that English spelling is somehow meant to be incomprehensible. A lot of English spelling reform has been non-Latin and Greek words being changed to have worse spellings in order to make them seem classical. Ptarmigan is perhaps the worst offender, but English spelling isn't necessarily messed up because of this. There is a virtue in trying to preserve the original form of a word. To what extent English succeeds at this is a whole nother problem. Number 2, why does German sound so aggressive? German is a Fortis language like English, but unlike most other foreign languages. That means that the voiceless consonants p, t, k, ch, t, p, and of course ch, are pronounced with a forceful burst of air. That's like a minor reason why. The real reason is because Hitler spoke it. Number 3, why does language use letter to represent sound? When you first design how to write down a language, you tend to pick an arrangement that makes sense. In most cases, oddities occur when the sounds drift, but the letters representing them remain the same, which is how we get the letters for k and g representing th and ch in Spanish. Since these sorts of videos thrive on examples, here are some more weird orthographies. Albanian uses x for z and xh for j. Greek uses nt for d, the same for b and g. Maori uses wh for f. A lot of Central American languages use ll for j, j for h, and x for sh. Polish uses l with a line through it for w. And Welsh got the whole vowel system messed up. That's the most common story. In other cases, you finish pairing up the sounds and letters, but you have some left over, and sometimes it's more efficient to just pair them up. That's how, in most African languages, C, Q, and X are pronounced as and k. And there's also Azerbaijani, which uses Q for g and C for j, which it shares with Turkish. Arapaho, which uses the number 3 to represent th, and Abenaki, which uses either the number 8 or ah to represent a vowel around Number 4, why are 2 words in different languages not the same? Well, first off, there are a lot of different words possible, but there are also a lot of different things, so it's inevitable some languages will put the same sounds together completely coincidentally. Domo arigato is not actually Spanish for Aryan cat dome. Similarly, Mbavaram, a tiny Australian language, refers to this thing as a dog. Actually, that example was kind of the opposite. No matter. A cognate is when 2 words in separate languages are from the same origin. Usually, as in the case of milch and milk, they have the same meaning, but this is by no means a requirement. The clearest example would be gift, which in English means gift, but in German means poison. Technically, they both refer to something you give or administer to someone. The German word is also a literal translation of the word dosage, which in English we just stole instead of translating. There's a lot of good examples of this. The fireplace of a building is its most important center, but it's also full of fire. A footstep might be the metaphorical first steps, but it might just be the bottom, which might just mean the lowest, or instead the lowest part of a musical staff, or perhaps the foundation of something. To drag might just mean to drag, but it also might mean to drag something out of its cover, or rather drag a utensil across a surface to create an image, or it could mean to drag a fishing line behind a boat to lure in fish, a definition which might be copied onto a similar sounding but unrelated word, and that word might metaphorically mean to make intentionally provocative content to people online, and ultimately someone who participates in such activities. And perhaps, spinning might also refer to a particular style of preparing meat by placing it on a rotating skewer, which brings me to my next question. Number 5, why is gyro pronounced like that and gyro isn't? Well, there's a complicated history for both words, but basically it boils down to that gyro is from ancient Greek while gyro is from modern Greek. Greek is not written using the Latin alphabet, it's written using the Greek alphabet, so called because it's the alphabet used to write Greek. Now, we have a system called transliteration for pretending it is written using the Latin alphabet, but this system was invented back when Greek was ancient. So this letter, which made a g sound, is written using a g. Repeat for remaining letters. Anyways, nowadays it makes a r sound, and this makes an e sound. But the r sound is weird because a cloud, e cloud, vealers like r and ch are usually normal, but turn into ya and sha next to front vowels. We pronounce it gyro because that's the accurate way to pronounce these letters. Should we update Greek transliteration? Probably. Sometimes we actually do. The gay island is now called Lesbos. But there's still a question to be answered, which is, why do we pronounce this gyro? The accurate ancient pronunciation would be something like gyro, which is of course oh, hold on. My producers are telling me Guro is something else. Truly disheartening. Anyways, this was borrowed into French in the 18th century, and unlike English, French has rules for Greek borrowings. French has a lot of Greek loanwords, but most of those entered Latin before it turned into French, so a new word is meant to undergo those changes again. So it ends up as Giro, which English gets to borrow as gyro.
And that's why.
Number 6. Are they them pronouns grammatically correct? People have been using the singular they for at least 800 years, but it used to mean an uncertain pronoun for when you don't know whether someone is a man or a woman, and nowadays it's used as neutral for when you know someone is neither, not to mention agender people. That being said, as long as people are using it and understanding it, it's grammatically correct. If you find it confusing, then you basically have two options: get everyone to stop using it, or learn about the usage so that you're no longer confused. And you can't really get everyone to stop using it, you kind of have to hope they do so on their own. And it doesn't seem like they're going to. Number 7. But why do languages even have gender? All languages have the same amount of information to transmit. When they simplify one thing, they have to complicate another. Languages which rely on inflections tag words so that they can be connected to each other. This necessitates the sorting of words into categories. The groups tend to be animate and inanimate, but for some reason, Proto-Indo-European took it upon themselves to split the inanimate into feminine and neutral. Number 8. What's the longest word in English? The longest word you'll find in a dictionary is pneumono-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, which is not really a word in the sense that you use it. At present, its current meaning is the longest word in the English language. Now, if any word has to be the longest, it makes sense that it's one we made up for that explicit purpose, but we could always make up one that's longer. Also, you could try describing something that actually exists. Volcanic silicate crystals can't cause silicosis. They're either too big to settle on the lungs or too small to do damage. Based on my research, the longest word that actually exists outside the bubble of long words is anti-disestablishmentarianism, and if you disagree with that, I can just coin a larger word. Empire State Building Horseshoe Magnet Eggnog Saucer Sound, which is a word used to refer to the sound a horseshoe magnet makes when it falls from the Empire State Building into a saucer full of eggnog. Number 9. Why is Smith the most common last name? Smith, originally meaning blacksmith or any other kind of metal worker, is the most common last name in English. Its translations are also incredibly common, but being a blacksmith wasn't even close to the most common profession. So why did it end up being the last name that stuck? Well, when we were assigned last names, the purpose was to give us some way of telling people with the same first name apart. Calling someone John the Surf is about as effective as calling them John the Person in that regard. So one of the reasons why Smith was so popular was because it was rare enough to be a useful identifier. But for another thing, everyone needed the smith. If you make barrels, not everyone knows you as a cooper. But if you work with metal, everyone knows you as John the Smith. So it's easier for it to become John Smith. Number 10. Is GIF or GIF correct? Soft G is when the letter G makes a weird sound in front of E and E. It's happened like 3 times in Europe. The most famous was when it happened in Latin, turning G into J. However, English is not Latin, and in our language, soft G became Y. But like I said, the English spelling system was made for French, so J is with a J or a soft G, and Y is with a Y. All this to say, there's a simple way telling how to pronounce a G. If it's from English, it's the hard G, otherwise it would be spelled with a Y. If it's from French, it's the soft G, J. But GIF is a neologism, it's not really from either language. All the words making it up are from French, however. Of course, none of that is really relevant, both are valid. I just pronounce it GIF because I don't like the way GIF sounds. The same is true for octopi and octopuses.